I have Mentuhotep the second and his symbol right here. And I want to talk a little bit about the idea of Hotep and the idea of peace. We talk a lot about Kemetic religion and Kushite religion and the whole idea of serving God and God coming from Nether and coming from one source. But what is it all for? Like, what does it all mean? What is it all for? And the idea of Hotep means peace. The idea is being satisfied. It's one who is of peace, one who is satisfied, or one who is satisfied God, as we talk about that, because his name is Mentuhotep, which kind of means he's satisfying God. So I want to talk about that and dig deep into that, because the concept of Hotep digs deeper than just, a surface look at what peace or satisfaction is. And when you think about different things like yoga, or you think of different traditions that are around the world, where you may think about nirvana or having some type of ultimate peace or actualization, ancient Kemetic people, ancient Kushite people had that idea. That was an idea and a concept that was there that we can touch on. And obviously they looked at it different ways. We're not saying that the people who lived 5,000 years ago looked at things the way we look at it now, 5,000 years later, or that they even looked at it the same for people 5,000 years or 10,000 years before them. But the idea of there being peace, the idea of there being satisfaction is something we can tap into today, which is why it means something. So when you're thinking about Kemetic philosophy and Kushite philosophy, you don't have to worry about whether or not there's a concept of peace, where there's a concept of satisfaction, where there's a concept of an all ever pervasive peace, if you will. It's there, and we can talk about that. You can get a lot out of that idea. And so I'll share this with you right here. So this hieroglyph, this is Mentuhotep the second. And you can see this hieroglyph, which is kind of like a piece of bread on a mat, if you will. And I know there are people who will see this and who will be in the comments who have more to offer. So if you have more to offer than I do, please feel free, jump in and share this and put your information out there. Let's share this with somebody. But the idea of an offering, so it represents the idea of the hieroglyphic, the symbol for peace was like a piece of bread, if you will, on an offering mat or being offered. So actually kind of like food. Think about how you feel when you're satisfied with food. And his name is like Mentu is satisfied. And you probably heard of people like Amenhotep or Ptahhotep. Ptah is satisfied. Ptah is at peace. So my soul is at peace with Ptah. Amen is satisfied. Amenhotep. And so this idea of offering to a deity, offering to an aspect of God. And you think about it, a lot of times when you offer food, you're doing that in a way to satisfy somebody, to have some sense of peace, right? But it goes deeper than just satisfying the deity or the expression of God that you're looking to satisfy or to appease. How do you have that when you're living it in yourself? How do you have that when you're actualizing peace and Hotep and eternal peace within yourself? And I remember reading in the Bible, I remember reading Jesus talking about, I came that you may have life and that you might have it more abundantly. And a lot of times when I hear people talk about that, they talk about that in terms of material things. And I think about that, and I know there are a lot of people who preach on that, and they preach about things. Why would God have the abundance and the peace that God offers be dependent upon things that people make? Things that men and women make? Why would that be the crux for what is peace? And so it doesn't mean, of course, you can't have things. It doesn't mean you don't know. I mean, Jesus talked about the sparrows having a place to lay their head and taking care of them. God will take care of you. It's not that you shouldn't have, but the idea of peace, a lot of times we equate that with money and material things. And a lot of times some preachers do. Some people do that in an aspect in church and in Christianity. They think about in general that peace has to do with abundant money, not necessarily with peace in everything that you, not necessarily with satisfying God, not necessarily with the peace that you have when there's no conflict within you. So when you think about that, the whole idea of, dripping with ice or having material things, we can see. I mean, I think one of the things that's happening now, you can see the veil being pulled off of Hollywood and entertainment, and that whole idea that what makes you happy, what makes you successful, what makes you someone to be envied is if you have power. We've seen people, whether they're presidents or owners of business or people in entertainment or people in some type of sports or people in the music industry, people in Hollywood, producers, people, former presidents of the United States, people who were actors, people in all kinds of very public-facing entrepreneurs or very public-facing employment, very public-facing jobs, if you will, and things that they're doing, be torn down, be experiencing things where it's not necessarily because you have money or because you are in front of people, or because you can sing or rap, or you have ice, or you can play a sport, or you're a Hollywood producer, you're something that doesn't necessarily grant you peace, right? Sometimes you might have more problems than the other folks. And so, and that obviously doesn't mean that you can't have these things, but it means that the idea of peace goes beyond the materialism that we talk about. And I think about peace as the absence of conflict. That's one way to look at it. And I know that we can talk about peace being the presence of something, but think about peace as the absence of conflict. If you are doing something and you are not conflicted in your soul, you don't have conflict within you, you don't have a situation where you're constantly thinking about what somebody else thinks, or is this wrong if you really are doing something wrong, or if you're doing something where you're worried about what other people think about you, you're not going to have a peace in that situation. You're not going to have Hotep. You're not going to be in a situation where you are satisfying God or that you're satisfied yourself. Jesus said, I came that you might have abundance, and you might have life, and that you might have it more abundantly. That whole idea of being able to enjoy your life and to be at peace no matter what you do, just because you are, just because you are. You look back in the Bible where in Exodus and Moses asked God, he's sending him to teach you, who shall I say sent me? Who shall I say is sending? Who is the God? What is your name? He said, tell him that I am. The whole idea that God is, the whole idea that God exists, and in God's existence itself is peace. There's no pushback to God. There's no friction. There's no conflict in God. There's no upsetting in God. There's an eternal state of peace. And that idea of Hotep, from a Kemetic standpoint, is being able to tap into that, to somehow being able to live your life where you please God, like Mentuhotep, pleasing Mentu, where you please God, but also not only that you please God, but you're also able to live a pleasing life, whether that is enjoying your family or enjoying just getting up in the morning, enjoying what you do. Everybody has a purpose. Everybody has a way to connect to God. And that Hotep is kind of the flowing of that connection, that constant communication with God that brings you a certain set of peace and a certain set of ideas that have no pushback, that have no conflict within your soul. Imagine getting up in the morning and you not feeling conflict. Whether or not there's conflict around, then you not feeling conflict, not feeling challenges, not feeling upset, but really literally being at peace and letting that be the manner in which you go about life, letting that be the manner in which you approach your day. Imagine that. Imagine being able to have a never-ending peace. And so as we think about that, and we think about that concept of Hotep, that really goes back into happiness, right? And a lot of the things that the Kemetic people did were connected with rituals and were connected with prayers, and their religion was a constant communication, a constant thanking, a constant reminder, a constant communication with God. That whole idea of allowing your mind to not just meditate on and think about things that don't bring you peace. Think about things that don't allow you to wake up in the morning and be happy, that don't allow you to live life abundantly. I mean, think about life is too short. Think of life doesn't go on forever. Imagine being able to spend your day every day in peace and in happiness. And that's what the idea of Hotep is. And that's what the idea that we can kind of take as we talk about this and kind of talk about this slide, that is not just looking at it from one way or from this way. When we were talking about neurology and we were talking about the aspect of Ptah and Atum and Amen and self-creation, the ability to speak things into existence, the ability to see and breathe on and hear things and to breathe those things about in your life, to have force and movement with that, to self-create, to have a certain part of this that might be hidden. Sometimes when you're bringing forth things in your life, you got to shut up about it. You got to hide it because you only need to let that germinate. Just like a seed that's germinating under the ground, or like a baby growing in your belly. Sometimes you have to let things happen in secret, away from all of the noise of other things, in order for it to germinate. You let those things happen through a state of peace. If you are in a state of conflict, it's hard to allow yourself to create the things you need to create in your life. So I just want to put that out there. I wanted to kind of touch on that and to touch on that topic and talk about the concept of Hotep and the concept of peace, and that Kemetic theology, Kushite theology offers that, talks about that. It is possible for you to live a life that's at peace. It is possible for you to live a life that's pleasing to God, and for you to have a life and a heaven on earth and a heaven after. So I just wanted to share that. I'm looking forward to your comments. Anything you have to share down below. I thank you so much for listening, and